Hey, good morning everybody. This is Russ, sailing vessel Tautog. Current location is Placencia Harbor, but we're getting underway and heading for Guatemala. So, Guatemala, that bit we'll get to in a moment. 2 days ago I tried to get underway and it was not a pretty picture. It was my method of getting underway. I was on a mooring ball at the time, and I'm at anchor now, but when I was getting on the way 2 days ago, it was off the mooring ball, and I managed somehow, just by being an idiot, with my sails up, because I was sailing off the ball, and just as I was releasing the last mooring line, you know, the wind changed, the wind puffed, and my sail filled, and the boat just took off, and I didn't hit anything. I got clear in the mooring ball, but I ended up with my mooring line wrapped around my propeller, and I'm already underway. So I made the decision to, well, hell, I'll continue on. I'll go down to New Haven, jump in the water there, clear the propeller, and then carry on, because I could have easily sailed all the way to New Haven. But the second problem I had was that the weather was rougher 2 days ago than I thought it would be, and I was certainly 2 to 4 foot seas, and probably more like 3 to 6 foot, because it had been blowing pretty hard for the last 5 days. And my dinghy was still hanging on the back of the boat in the normal ready-to-use mode, and it was getting the shit kicked out of it. So I said, you know, we're going to lose a dinghy, because it's only held on with snap shackles. And I thought, you know, one good wave and these snap shackles break, the dinghy's going to drop, it's going to float away. I'm not going to be able to recover it because I have a boat with no engine. I couldn't use the engine. So I thought, this smells wrong. I'd only gone 1.5 miles, so I turned around and came back and went to Yoli's and had a drink, and then I just, you carry on. You clear the propeller, you reset the dinghy, and here I am, ready to go. Why Guatemala? First, I'll tell you, I'm disappointed in myself, because if you take a step back and look at how I managed the whole year from 2024 to 2025, yeah, I didn't do it well enough. I mean, if I really need to study that Jimmy Cornell book about world cruising routes, but he doesn't address, once you get into Guatemala, how the hell you get out, because to get down to Panama, you need those perfect conditions so you don't have to beat against the trade winds. And I could still do that. I could still leave here, go north out the English K Channel, and just start tacking my way across the Bay of Honduras, or whatever you want to call this area. But, I mean, at night, honestly, if you look at the forecast, the nighttime winds are going to be 25 to 35. And I go, fook that, you know. And it's like 15 knots in the daytime, but it's much stronger at night. And I said, you know, I don't want any part of that. You know, I'm either going to just stay here in Placencia, which is not a good hurricane home, or go to Guatemala. So that's what I'm doing. If you look at the weather right now, there's a low pressure system that is probably going to form on the Caribbean side of Costa Rica and Panama, and that's like about 2 weeks out. And at this exact moment, there's one that just crossed over to the Pacific side, and that's going to be the first named storm of the Pacific season. So this is probably still not the right time to cruise down into Panama, even if I could beat against 35 knot winds, and I just don't have any taste for that. So here we go, off to Guatemala. And just sailed through that patch of sargasso. And I was inside the boat at the time, and it was scraping the hull like sandpaper, and it sounded so weird. Freaked me out. It sounded like a leak at first. It sounded like water flowing, but it was just the sargassum scraping on the hull. Damn, that'll wake you up. Anyway, our location is still in the Belize waters. Well, there we are, heading for Guatemala, and I put up a couple red balls showing where I'm planning to go. It helps me steer and zoom in. But the goal today is to get down here to Tres Puntas, drop an anchor here for about 10 hours, and about 9-10 o'clock at night take the withering sea breeze and try to cross over as far as I can get, and then anchor in front of Livingston when the wind is completely dead. There's a risk because sometimes the wind doesn't really die, and then that would be an awful anchorage. But anyway, no complaints. We spent last night in New Haven. I've been there before. It wasn't very fun though. It was really, really windy, and the doctor flies were really bad. And so you couldn't even just sit outside without getting freaking bit. I got bit right in my ass. I swear it flew up the legs of my short. Holy cow! We are approaching Tres Puntas in Guatemala. So you can see that peninsula there in front of me. That's called Tres Puntas. Damn. And we're just, so I guess the weather and the wind is changing a lot as we approach the land because the wind is steered by the seashore. So I'm expecting the wind basically to be parallel to the beach. And I've had to disengage Agatha, and I'm going to hand steering. To the right of the point, probably can't see it, but you will when we get closer. There's a shallow spot, which is fine. We kind of expect that. You can see in the chart, I'm coming down from the north, and you can see there's a shallow spot, and on the second one is where I plan to anchor. Getting close. Get into about 10 feet of water and drop a hook. Tres Puntas, Guatemala. The trade wind is really blowing, or I should say the sea breeze, because this is a trade wind that stops at night, and I'm grateful for that. There's my anchor line. I'm going to jump in real quick and check that. The water. Gonna go down and look at the propeller. So there's my track, but that's not really how the track starts. The track started up here in Placencia, right about there, okay? And so day one, I just sailed down here about 24 miles, I think, total from anchor to anchor the next morning. And I went this way, through the Snake Caves and straight down to Tres Puntas. And that was pretty much uneventful. No issue there. At Tres Puntas, I pulled in, anchored almost the exact same spot I've anchored before. Had very lovely anchorage there, but then it got worse. My plan was to time it so that I caught the wind, the sea breeze as it faded away, and just take the last few hours of sea breeze and slowly drift across in the middle of the night. But something came over me and I left too early. That's the bottom line. So you see, I just sailed. This is under sail power the whole time. And I'll explain all these lines in a minute here. And I got to about here and I realized, okay, the wind is still blowing and it's pretty rough, and I tried to anchor and that didn't go well. Okay, so step one is this is what it looks like when you're anchoring. It has not gone well. Ignore this line, that's me escaping. But when I came in, I anchored about here. That's where the anchor went down, and that's my initial anchor track, which is normal. And so I thought, well, it's a little bit rough, but I'm making it okay. And then the anchor began to drag. That's what it looks like when you drag. A lot of this is me maneuvering, trying to pick up the chain, and it wasn't working. I couldn't get that thing to budge, and it was not easy to do. And so I was ready. Well, I'll talk about that later. But at some point, when I got here, it was getting desperate. I'm heading into I only had about a foot of water below the keel, and with the waves, I was going to start slamming the bottom. But I finally got the anchor up, and then I sailed out. The time was about midnight. And then the question is, well, what do you do if you're not going to cross the bar until 7:30 in the morning and you've got 7 hours to kill? Well, I motored this one. I motored directly into the wind for about 2 hours, and then I shut off the engine and I turned around and I drifted back. And believe it or not, hydrovane will steer the boat, with no power at all. And I made about 1.5 knots of just blowing bare poles. Then I decided to pull an old Navy trick, which we call milling about smartly. And milling about smartly means when you're getting kind of close to land, you want to kind of stay close to where you're going to meet the towboat driver, which is here. You don't want to get 20 miles away. So I just put a tiny little bit of head sail up, and I just sailed as slowly as this boat can sail along the shore. I went 1 hour exactly, and then I turned around and I went back. 1 hour, no, that was 2 hours, no, or 1.5, I don't remember. But by this time, it's getting to be daylight. I'm getting close, it's like 6:30, and I turned around one last time, and finally, I took in the sail and drifted in. I see I use the term milling about smartly, so that can mean back in the military days when we were just waiting in line or something like that, and you really didn't have anything to do, but they couldn't send you home, that kind of thing. But what do you do when everything is going well at sea and the boat is sailing herself? I mean, you look at the pelicans, you look at beautiful sunrises, and if it's me, I am just grateful to be alive and still in good health at this point. Considering that just 5 hours ago, I thought I was about to lose the ship. I couldn't get the anchor recovered, and I was ready with my Rambo knife to cut that frickin' anchor line and just get out of there without my anchor. That's how bad it was getting in the middle of the night. But it all kind of turned out beautifully, and these dolphins were here to greet me when I was approaching, sitting out there milling about smartly. And this is not even a half a mile from the beach. So it's all good, guys. I'm very happy to make it in here, and I just grateful in this. But at this point, I was just feeling very relieved. So I make my log entries, and then I go meet Hector, and he tows me in again. One shitty day, one good day. I guess that's how it works out, eh? A friend of mine asked me, how do you actually meet up with Hector, and how in the world did I know that I should call Hector to get a tow across the bar? Well, that's what I think is fabulous about the cruising community, is because you get this word of mouth and on Facebook groups and all sorts of other ways where us cruisers will always try to help each other. There's a Real Dulce Cruisers group. There's one for Isla Mujeres. And I learned about Hector and Raul, who is the customs immigration agent. I learned about both of them while I was in Mexico 4 years ago, and I had their WhatsApp phone numbers, honestly, and that's how you do it. So I had pre-sent all of my information to Raul, so he was lined up. You're looking at Hector there, but just beyond is the city of Livingston, and Raul was standing by to receive me, and and he was going to bring all the other, the customs, immigration, the port captain, all those folks have to come out to the boat. And it's all arranged on WhatsApp, believe it or not. And you get the source information usually, honestly, from Facebook. So I don't know how sailors did it, 50 years ago. Usually then it was all on group chats on the single sideband radio. But that's kind of gone the way of the buffalo. Nobody really does that anymore. But at any rate, let's go meet Hector and get on in. to speed it up a little bit real quick. After I got the tow line connected, I run back to the helm because I have to steer my boat to be directly behind Hector because it is not so easy for him to tow 22,000 pounds. So, okay, there's two things to note here. There's a sailboat that looks like she's on the way out, but that's not quite true. She had gone in trying to get through the bar unassisted, but kept running into sandbars and mud bars, and they finally turned around, and they're heading back out to about 10 feet of water. So they're going to wait until Hector is done with me, and then he'll go and tow them next. So that's part of it. The other part is that you'll notice the tow line continues to kind of go taut and then slack, taut and slack. Run into some obstructions under the bottom. You know, my boat drags and the boat gets really taut, but when I clear the sandbar, then my boat it's much easier to tow, and I get a little closer to Hector because he's going a little slower at that time. So we're getting a lot of this herky-jerky stuff, and I was worried about the tow line breaking just like that. And that is why you never stand in line with the tow line, because when they snap back, that recoiling line can kill a person. So it's been about a 10 or 15 minute delay, and we recovered the broken tow line, and then Hector came alongside, and his crew now has a line tied from their boat to the main halyard, which connects to the top of the mast on my boat. So they're going to head out, and they'll be out of the picture, and I can't do anything about that, but they'll be moving off to my port side, and they're going to take on a parallel course, but they're going to keep attention so that my boat heels over, and that'll raise my keel above the mud, and then I drive my boat right down the correct track, and they just hold attention on my boat so that the boat remains heeled over about 20 to 25, maybe 30 degrees. And for me, it's got to be on the port side because my engine cooling water intake is on the port side. At this point, it's been another 5 minutes or so, and now I've got the boat heeled over about anywhere between 15 and 30 degrees, I think, most of the time. It comes and goes as we adjust course, but it's my responsibility to stay on the correct track. I can steer my boat, and I have to keep my boat on the correct path, and Hector's job is to keep me heeled over. So that's what we do, and I go as fast as my boat will go, just about. I'm hitting 4.5 knots, trying to get the hell out of this mud, and once we get to the other side, when Hector can see my position is in a good spot, then he slacks off his tension, drives closer to me, and then we're done. Okay, anchored, shift colors. Holy moly, that was a busy day. Busy freaking 35 hours. Wow. But we made it. Hector's already heading back out to get the other two boats in. He has to take advantage of the high tide. He took me first. Holy moly. And about 30 minutes later, that small boat you see there, that approaching the other sailboat, that boat came to me first because I was the first one on the list and the first one in, but Raul has with him in that other boat the representatives from the Port Authority, from Customs, and from Immigration, and they are all on hot standby, but they needed to see some of my original documents and that sort of stuff. And then it's, Raul gives me permission to go ahead and strike down the quarantine flag, which you see me doing here, and then we're kind of done. Okay guys, so I'm going to end the video here. I really never get tired of the gorge. I think it's geologically beautiful and it's very much unspoiled wilderness, so it's really quite a nice trip. And here I am in Cayo Quemado. It's not quite all the way up to the city of Fronteras, but this is the first anchorage I was going for. I'm going to hang here for a few days and then we'll head back into the city. So with that, take care everybody. Appreciate it. Bye-bye.